E equals mc squared, arguably the most famous physics equation. It defined a novel insight into our reality, from its inception as nothing more than a thought experiment, to a terrible warning from history with the potential as a terror weapon, to the staggering efforts to turn a mere concept into a nuts and bolts practical device. Humans achieved the power of gods. But this is not the story of the triumph of physics. This is the story of how physics became weaponized. The science of physics is not real or absolute. It merely strives to describe forces of nature the best it can. It also is constantly wrong, but by accepting it is wrong, it removes the hubris of human belief. Science has a superpower. It is open to change, to being redefined when new data is discovered. The defining decade of physics discovery occurred at a lull between mankind's insatiable and insane desire for conflict, between the Great War and what was to become known as World War II. In the 1920s and 30s, geniuses described solid matter as just bonds of energy, discovered the philosopher's stone by observing radioactive elements transmuting into lead, and we met the uncertainty of a cat, both dead and alive. Physicists opened Pandora's box. But that box slammed shut. Humans returned to war. Opposing sides exploited these newly defined novel concepts in science. The physics of radar won the war for the Allies, and the terrible doomsday weapon born from a mere equation, E equals mc squared, unleashed the energy of the atom and ended that war. So, did we emerge from World War II to a brave new world of peaceful applications for novel physics? No. Governments and military held onto Pandora's box. They saw how weaponizing physics worked, how novel ideas in science were a powerful tool to their arsenal of power. Physics went dark. Novel ideas were kept away in secret laboratories. Research funding was dominated by military investment. Billions were spent keeping ideas secret. And we have never emerged into the light. Today we live in a world controlled by magicians. Citizens are treated like puppets, consuming products that they don't fully understand, being exploited by commercial interests who want us to remain in the dark about how things work. But most of all, we live in a world today with highly secret military technology, kept intentionally dark, exploiting the strange, and plunging our society into the unknown. What went wrong? How do we emerge from this era? Join me in a fascinating, insightful discussion where I ask three 21st century physics researchers, how did we mess up and how do we fix this mess?
Physics went dark in the 1940s with the start of the Manhattan Project, where words like atomic, fusion, nuclear energy, and anything to do with that were completely blacklisted by Operation Mockingbird. They were not allowed. You were not allowed to write a news article. It would not get past your editor. They would censor anything that had to do with talk about anything atomic, anything nuclear, and that is key because you see the same exact thing happening today with the modern equivalent of UFO tech talking points. Things like warp drive or polariton condensate or laser pumped light craft or supercavitating missiles, or even something as simple as quantum vacuum engineering and the Schwinger limit. and the is completely blacklisted from the mainstream conversation. You'll never hear the technology talked about on the mainstream news or in the Congress. Even in these hearings that we're having in Congress, they've all been focused on UFO videos and analysis of video and stuff like that. The technology is completely absent from the conversation, and I think that that's extremely revealing. And it goes right back to the Manhattan Project, where they did the same exact thing.
Well, unfortunately for society at large and for the physics community especially, after World War II, the control of these projects stayed internal to the Atomic Energy Commission. This is a predecessor organization to the United States' Department of Energy. In released FOIA documents that have been uncovered by a researcher named Sean Rash, it is shown that in the 1950s, T. Townsend Brown and several other researchers were working with the Atomic Energy Commission in a company known as Spheres Inc., totally creative name, Department of Energy. They were working on electrostatics and how they could make spheres levitate into the air. This continued when the AEC became the Department of Energy. It got shooted off into DARPA, who did some of this research under the name Project Walrus, and it's continued into the 20th and 21st centuries now, hidden from most public scrutiny in a program at the Department of Energy. And unfortunately, they've tried to keep this so secret from us, the tax-paying public, but the Chinese Communist Party was able to insert spies into the Department of Energy at Los Alamos Labs, and they lifted hard drives containing all of this data and research and bootstrapped their own program, which, since they do not silo and compartmentalize their scientists, and they have all of their best scientists working on this problem, they have now surpassed technologically the United States in this specific area of science.
Well, I was an engineer in the construction of commercial nuclear power plants.
Right.
Just to clarify that I'm not a physicist. And I would say that, nuclear power was put toward good, useful, peaceful purposes. And is still used today mainly for that purpose. We haven't seen a nuclear bomb go off for quite some time, but we see our shores protected with nuclear submarines. This house is being warmed right now by that plants I worked at, not far from here, 25 miles or so. So I guess I'd say I'm optimistic. I think it's a net positive. I think it shows us in real time the value of energy density. If I learned anything applicable to the future from nuclear, I would say that was the biggest takeaway right there. Because if you're going to fly a flying saucer or an advanced propulsion, you're going to have to master energy density, which is small spaces, quick time, and high speeds.
I would say I'm more of a historian of top secret technologies and lost physics programs, like a historian that tries to go through all the top secret research projects and SAPs that have been lost over time and piece those back together for people, for the history of all that stuff. And yeah, as Josh said, the 1950s had the spheres and Project Walrus, but there was also Project Rainbow under Edward Mills Purcell, who was the guy who discovered nuclear magnetic resonance.
Right.
And that was the whole CIA's invisibility project that led to the stealth, this modern stealth program. So a lot of these things, you have to understand the origin stories and how they were set up and how this technology has been researched in secret and compartmentalized. Trillions of dollars missing from our budgets here in the black budget in America, where we just don't know where the money went to. And there's pilots seeing these things flying around that they can't explain. So I think it's easy to put two and two together. for me, as my limited understanding of science and invisibility technology, if they're aliens, then obviously dropping their invisibility cloaks if we can see them. So it just makes more sense to me that what people are seeing out there is something that we've created ourselves, and the fact that there's 70, 80 years of documentation showing that there's our top scientists have been actually working on these programs in secret, well, going out there into the public and ridiculing the topic and telling everyone this is crazy, this doesn't exist, and the people who believe in this also believe in Bigfoot and the Loch Ness monster and poltergeists and dino beavers. And I think this has been a propaganda campaign to shut down legitimate scientific research and prevent that information from getting out into the public mindset.
Well, if you want to have a startup or a new idea, you have to have a customer first. That's kind of where I stopped in that, because you have to bring somebody in. If you want money for something speculative like that, you have to bring somebody in and say, "Hey, Peter Thiel, see this guy Elon Musk? He owns a rocket company. If you give me money," he said, and I do my thing, he said he'll buy my flying saucers made out of light pumping, and so you have to get over that barrier. But see, that's what this whole topic is going to get over, that barrier, help us get over that barrier, I think. Well, because when you're this close, when you're having congressmen say, "Well, I think they found some new propulsion," and then suddenly that's quieted.
Right.
People are going to get curious. People are going to want to know what it is. What did they shoot down over the North Pole?
Right.
Or if they come out with these 88 whistleblowers on January 9th, a few days from now, or whatever it is, suddenly people are going to get interested in it, and they're going to want to know what's in those hangars and how do they work.
They're propping up these whistleblowers who are, people, David Grush and these other whistleblowers who can't talk about the information and can't come forward. Right. And that's what's in front of Congress. That's what's in the mainstream media and all these news stations. But on the APEC conference, the All Propulsion Conference, we've interviewed probably over 50 scientists out of DARPA, NASA, and programs that actually worked on this stuff. We've tracked down the scientists and tried to get as many of them who can talk or aren't under NDAs to come forward and give full testimony, and plus an hour Q&A afterwards where a team of engineers and scientists ask them detailed technical questions. And this is all open source, all open to the public, but it's being completely ignored, blacklisted, and just shadow banned. I have people complaining that they're subscribing to my channel. They're getting unsubscribed by YouTube from my videos. The comments are getting deleted. Weird things are happening, and it seems to be around this information. And I have very little faith in anything that's put out by the mainstream and dangled in front of us, because they just have a history of shutting down real information, which I'm seeing. I've been putting out real information like as best as I possibly can, the most top-notch, well-researched, factual, documented evidence that I can find on this. And that information is getting completely ignored, and we're getting, these fake whistleblowers and fake propaganda shoved down our throats by the mainstream, which are completely ignoring the real stuff. So I have no faith in any of that. I don't trust any of it. I think all of it is sort of a put on. I think that they've been doing that for decades and decades, like back in the 50s when they fired James McDonald from the UFO panel in Project Blue Book, because he was the one scientist with the real intel that was, pushing it in the right direction, and they had to get him off the panel so that they could get, Hynek and these other guys to run a cover-up for the U.S. government. So I just don't have any faith. I've seen how they operate. They have billions and billions of dollars, more money spent on the secrecy than is spent on the actual research, if you look into it. So when you see all this stuff being pumped out on the mainstream, and they got these 40 do we have 50 scientists who have more credentials and academic credibility and can talk openly about everything they've worked on it, and that's getting completely ignored and blacklisted? Well, people think that the heroes are almost here, they're right around the corner. Dude, they've already come forward. Disclosure already happened, and people are slowly waking up to the material and the information, and we're slowly getting the scientists in line on the projects and realizing that, hey, there's been a systematic cover-up since the 1960s. When you look into the scientists who are working on this, like Bryce Dewitt and John Archibald Wheeler, this expert metallurgist who did all this secret metallurgy work for Battelle when they were, the scientists like John Elroy Center came forward and said, hey, I was working for Battelle and they gave me this metal, and I think it was a piece of an alien spacecraft that they had me work on. And there's whistleblowers like that. There's, Robert Starbacher gave an interview in 1950 saying, they have these reverse engineering programs, and I was part of it. A very small compartmentalized section of the Defense Department is working on this stuff and have these objects, have these craft. Senator Barry Goldwater found out about it, went after it, got shut down. When he tried to go after the Blue Room at Wright-Patterson and everything. So there's this whole documented history of this, and also the science going into a black hole. I think it went into a black hole in the late 1960s, because I read this Battelle Rencontres. It's actually a French, so maybe you can check it out. It's was written in 1967. Well, they have an annual meeting every year where they get all these top scientists together to kind of discuss the current state of science and physics and stuff. And they did a number of. But the one in 1967 with Bryce Dewitt and Archibald Wheeler goes into like all the physics that we're now like coming to understand today, finally. The E8 theory was all in there and stuff. And it's like that stuff was packaged up and put into a black box. And the mainstream community was given string theory and dark matter and dark energy to chase their tails in fucking circles for 40 years. Sorry, I can edit that.
No, I think that
chase their tails in circles for 40 years.
Brilliant.
It's ridiculous. I'm sorry for the profanity, but it makes me so angry what they've done.
So how do we fix this? Who wants to jump in and say, I mean, APEC, you guys are all in APEC. I think it does a fantastic job. And as Jeremy says, I mean, the interviews and Tim Ventura's channel as well, and Jeremy's channel, and we all are trying to chip away at what I think is the real disclosure, because people like you guys actually know what's going on. I mean, Congress know nothing, and the media certainly don't want to tell the truth. And I think the top end so-called disclosure channels are just not actually telling us what's going on at all. Would you agree with me that it has to come from scientists?
Yeah, I definitely knew that. The government is never going to admit to anything they've done ever. It's like it just get over that idea that they're going to tell you the truth. They had their chance with the JFK Records Review Act, and they modeled this whole Schumer amendment after that failed, way to push it's a way to kick the can down the road to another 25 years.
Right.
And another 25 years, AI is going to get so good, then none of this will matter anymore. So I can see why they're trying to kick the can down the road for another 25 years, because they know by then it will be too late.
I do have one quick point about the 25-year mark that Jeremy mentioned, where I think at Seoul conference, Carl Nell mentioned that they had a plan of continuing the slow release of disclosure for the next 16 to 25 years. It's far more simple than what you're describing. The reason that they want this cover-up to continue for 16 more years is because that is what the length of time that is left on these patents that have been assigned to private contractors and paid for with our American taxpayer dollars. That's the amount of time that they have left to profit off of this and stick the profits that were paid for by our money that should have been our research, and they're privatizing it and they're putting the money back into their own pockets. And it's disgusting. Our own national laboratories are being used against us, and it's disgusting.
I think what I'm going to add to what Josh said by, both of them said, bipartisan disgust with this cover up and so-called tax dollar for fraud, whatever secrecy, whatever you want to call it.
Mhm.
Both sides of American politics are against it. So between that and whistleblowers, disclosure of some kind will happen. Like, yeah, okay, they're here. We have secret stuff, but we can't tell you. Just like we're not going to tell you about the nuclear bomb, and you're not, how to build one.
Right.
And that's tough luck for you. But then the private sector is going to get interested in, because they're free, and it will become realized by the big shots with the money, the old companies, the new companies, the Silicon Valleys, whatever. And they're going to want to look into this. What could it be? How can we make money out of this? We know it's there now. Let's start paying attention to the history, to the present history. I'm pointing at Jeremy. The present, I'm pointing at Josh. And the possible future is me, the way I see it. So I think that's the way it goes. And I think that'll be a good thing. Because it's something, something's there. I'm certain of it in my own way. But everyone should look at.
There's a lot of venture capitalists that are actually joining the APEC and Mics.
They spoke there. At least one guy spoke there. And
paying attention now, man.
If they're not in the wings, they should be.
Right.
And but they need the current thing. They need it. It needs to be more popular.
Everyone's looking for the next Bitcoin, the next .com wave, the next money maker.
NFT monkeys. Yeah, but I think this is like the more closer to the next internal combustion engine, in my opinion, because they may even have it right now behind closed doors at Wright-Patterson. They know what it is. They're starting to work on it with the terahertz lab. All about that, you guys. Mm. But they're going to keep it secret. So if the rest of the world wants it, maybe we'll get something in 25 years, or we can start working on it ourselves. How do we do that? First thing we do is go out and look around a little bit, watch shows like this one, like Jeremy's, et cetera, and so forth. Go read Kelly's web pages and look at his YouTubes. They may be insane, or they may be the best thing that ever came down the pike. We don't know yet.
Right.
So, but they need the curiosity to get to it, I think.
Right.
Very, very well said, Bryan. That was great. Curiosity, and not relying on the very people who actually write the laws of secrecy to ever tell you anything. And I think a lot of them don't know what they're talking about anyway. So we need to actually reveal what's going on.
The most prestigious academics in the world at the time declared, like Lord Kelvin, declared that heavier than air flying machines were impossible and that we'd never achieve flight.
Right.
And in fact, there was a well-funded academic team that was working on building the first airplane alongside the Wright brothers. But the Wright brothers, two curious, dedicated, bicycle engineers, beat them to the punch. Why? Because they had the right physics model.
Yes.
They paid more attention.
Yeah, that's great.
And at the time, they had blimps. They had large, rigid airship blimps at the time, and those went away in the 30s too. And it wasn't because the Hindenburg crashed. It was because they were taking that technology. They had realized aerogel's impact to that technology, and they moved it all dark, and it went through all of those programs that we described earlier.
Yeah, that's very
good. It could be.
Thank you so much, Josh, Jeremy, and Bryan. What do you think about physics going dark? Please join in this discussion. Are we actually puppets being manipulated by secret military science and consumer technology? What we discussed today is so important. In my humble opinion, it's actually more important than disclosure. The truth will come from independent scientists, not governments, not the military. Please reach out and thank these wonderful contributors. Because of them, the truth will be out there.